Everyone laughed when the black waitress spoke Arabic, until the billionaire CEO asked her to stop. Why did everyone laugh when the black waitress spoke Arabic? And what made the billionaire CEO suddenly ask her to stop? Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. We're so happy to have you here for another captivating and unforgettable story. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss our latest stories. Thank you sincerely for watching, supporting, and being part of our growing community. Now, tell us in the comments, how would you react if someone suddenly asked you to stop speaking a language you were using? With that question in mind, let's step into the story and discover how this remarkable moment began. The interpreter's silver pen stopped moving when Nia heard him replace one Arabic word with another. Crystal chimed beneath the chandeliers of the Halcyon Grand's private ballroom. Amber light slid across white orchids, polished walnut, and placed settings heavy enough to announce wealth before anyone spoke. At the center of the 40-foot table, Ethan Cole lifted his glass, and the room obeyed. Conversations softened. Servers slowed. Even the string quartet lowered its final note until only the ventilation system's cool breath remained. Tonight, Ethan said, we build more than a partnership. Behind him, a screen displayed the logos of Cole Meridian and Al Rashid Holdings above the figure $4.2 billion. Ethan wore a midnight blue tuxedo without a wrinkle. He did not consult the cards beside his plate. He knew every projection, every delegate, every pressure point. This dinner was his stage, and control was the language he trusted most. Nia Brooks approached from his left, carrying a porcelain plate warm against her palm. Saffron, roasted lamb, and cardamom perfumed the air. She placed the dish before the deputy chairman without disturbing his folded hands, then stepped back to the position management had assigned her, visible when needed, invisible otherwise. Across the table, Sheikh Omar al-Rashid spoke quietly in Arabic. His voice was measured, almost gentle. He said the agreement required careful review before any authority could be granted. Victor Hale, Ethan's interpreter, smiled and delivered the English version. Chairman al-Rashid says he is comfortable granting the requested authority. Nia's fingers tightened around the serving cloth. It was not a clumsy translation. Not exactly. The grammar was polished. The meaning was wrong. She looked towards Sheikh Omar. He had not corrected Victor. His dark eyes remained on Ethan, while an advisor beside him made a note. Ethan nodded once, accepting the sentence as if it had arrived stamped and certified. Nia moved on. At the service station, silver lids clicked against marble. Her manager, Martin Pike, leaned close enough for her to smell peppermint on his breath. Table 12 watches everything, he whispered. No improvising. No conversation. One complaint and you're off the schedule. Nia glanced at the folded insurance notice inside her order pad. Her mother's specialist appointment was Monday. Missing 1 week of shifts would mean choosing between rent and the next premium. Understood, she said. She returned with coffee as Victor altered another phrase. A request for mutual consultation became permission to proceed. A warning about legal exposure emerged in English as routine caution. Each substitution was small enough to pass beneath the music, yet sharp enough to change who would hold power once the signatures dried. Nia poured without spilling a drop. Steam brushed her knuckles. Her pulse beat against the thin cuff of her uniform, but her face remained still. Ethan asked a question about regulatory timing. Sheikh Omar answered. Victor reshaped it again. This time, Nia saw one of the al-Rashid attorneys stop writing. Ethan noticed only the pause and filled it with confidence. Then we appear to understand one another. Around him, executives smiled. Glasses rose. Cameras flashed soundlessly behind smoked panels. Nia stepped away with the coffee pot, carrying knowledge no one had invited her to possess. At the far end of the table, one of the Arab guests studied the entree, touched his throat, and searched the room for someone who could understand him. Nia heard his question clearly. Martin's warning echoed closer. So did her mother's unpaid premium. Then the guest looked directly at her and asked again, in Arabic. This time, silence would require an answer too. Does this contain sesame? The question slipped beneath the clink of crystal and the soft pulse of the string quartet. The Arab guest touched 2 fingers to his throat, then pointed at the amber glaze shining beneath the chandelier light. Steam carried the scent of citrus and toasted spice across the linen. Nia set down the coffee pot. Yes, she answered in Arabic, her voice quiet but precise. The glaze contains tahini. Please don't eat it. I'll bring you a new plate and alert the kitchen. The guest's hand dropped from his throat. Relief softened his face. Then laughter broke along the table. One of Cole Meridian's executives leaned toward another, his cuff links scraping the polished wood. Did she just make that up? A second guest covered a grin with his napkin. Someone near the smoked glass panels attempted to imitate Nia's Arabic, stretching the consonants into a clumsy joke. More laughter followed. It moved through the ballroom like champagne spilling across white cloth, bright, careless, and impossible to gather once released. Martin Pike stood near the service doors beneath a wash of blue light. His jaw tightened. One complaint, his stare reminded her. One complaint, and her shifts disappeared. Nia could still feel her mother's insurance notice folded inside her purse downstairs. She lifted the untouched entree with steady hands. The porcelain was hot against her palm. I'll replace this immediately, she told the guest in English. No, he replied in Arabic. His tone carried no amusement. You understood me the first time. That silenced only the seats closest to him. Farther down, an executive chuckled and asked Victor Hale whether the hotel had begun hiring diplomats as servers. Victor smiled without showing his teeth. Her accent is enthusiastic, he said. Accuracy is another matter. Nia turned toward him. For half a second, the room narrowed to the whisper of air conditioning and the weight of the plate in her hands. Correcting Victor would make this something larger. Defending herself would make Martin's warning real. Instead, she faced the Arab guest and repeated the ingredients in Arabic: tahini, sesame oil, toasted seeds, and a garnish prepared on the same surface. No flourish. No apology. Each word landed cleanly. The Al-Rashid attorney stopped tapping his pen. Sheikh Omar Al-Rashid slowly lowered his glass. He had not laughed. His gaze moved from Nia to the plate, then to Victor, measuring not her pronunciation but the difference between competence and performance. Across the table, Ethan Cole noticed. Until then, the evening had obeyed him. The lighting, the timing, the raised glasses, even the pauses between sentences. Now a waitress had spoken 7 quiet words, and the most important man in the delegation was watching his interpreter differently. Ethan raised one hand. The scattered laughter thinned, then died beneath the quartet's final violin note. Victor, he said, keeping his eyes on Sheikh Omar. What exactly did she tell him? Victor reached for his water. Ice clicked against crystal. Before he could answer, Sheikh Omar spoke in English, calm enough to sharpen every syllable. She told him the truth. The guest's plate remained suspended in Nia's hands while Ethan looked from her to the interpreter beside him. Then Sheikh Omar turned to Nia and asked another question in Arabic. This one not about food. This one about what she had already heard. Gold candlelight trembled across the unsigned contracts as the air conditioning pushed a winter chill through the ballroom. Somewhere near the kitchen doors, porcelain struck porcelain with a brittle click. Nia lowered the guest's sesame-tainted plate onto her tray, but Sheikh Omar's question still hung before her in Arabic. What else did you hear? Martin Pike stood beside a marble column, one hand curled around his service ledger. His earlier warning required no repetition. One complaint, no shifts, no insurance. Nia felt the stiff edge of her mother's coverage notice inside her purse at the server station. Across the table, Victor Hale leaned toward Ethan before she could answer. Mr. Al-Rashid is merely impressed by the staff, he said. We should proceed. Sheikh Omar did not look impressed. His attorney stopped tapping his silver pen. Ethan studied the distance between Victor's easy smile and Omar's motionless face. Then he gestured toward the contracts. Continue with the final clause. Victor opened the Arabic agreement. The paper whispered beneath his cufflinks. Sheikh Omar spoke carefully, pausing twice while the attorney traced a paragraph with one finger. Nia understood every word. The delegation would preserve the right to review any future transfer of the logistics network. They were willing to keep negotiating. Nothing more. Victor turned to Ethan. They accept Cole Meridian's controlling authority over all future transfers, he announced. The provision is approved. Ethan reached for his fountain pen. The Al-Rashid attorney's finger stopped on the page. Nia's tray grew heavy against her palm. Silence would protect her uniform, her schedule, and the insurance card that helped keep her mother in treatment. Silence would also let one false sentence harden into a $4.2 billion signature. The pen touched paper. That is not what he said. Nia's voice did not rise, yet it crossed the ballroom more cleanly than the microphones. Martin shut his ledger. Victor turned slowly. Excuse me. Nia set the tray on a service stand. Silverware shivered against china. With both hands now free, she faced Sheikh Omar rather than Victor and repeated his statement in Arabic, precisely, without embellishment. Then she translated it into English. He said the delegation retains the right to review future transfers. He said they are prepared to continue negotiations. He did not surrender control, and he did not approve this clause. Even the quartet had gone quiet. Rosin and roasted lamb lingered in the cold air. Victor gave a short laugh, but no one followed him. She understands restaurant Arabic, he said. Commercial language is different. Nia reached toward the open agreement, stopping before her fingers touched it. Then asked him whether the word he used means review or control. Ethan's pen remained poised above the signature line. For the first time that evening, the room did not move when he moved. It waited on someone else. Sheikh Omar answered in English. Review. His attorney closed the Arabic copy, then pulled the English version toward him. These documents do not say the same thing. Ethan placed his pen flat on the table. The small sound carried farther than applause. His gaze settled on Victor, but Martin was already crossing the carpet toward Nia, his jaw rigid and her employment badge pinched between two fingers. Around them, $4 billion had stopped moving, and the first price for stopping it was about to be taken from the woman who had told the truth. Your shift ends now. Martin Pike's words cut through the low hum of the ventilation system. The scent of roasted lamb and expensive cedar cologne lingered over the table, suddenly too heavy for the chilled ballroom. Nia watched her badge sway between Martin's fingers, its plastic edge flashing beneath the chandeliers. You abandoned service protocol, interrupted a private negotiation, and embarrassed the hotel, he said. You're suspended pending review. He pulled the folded schedule from his jacket and struck a black line through her remaining shifts. The pen scratched loudly against the paper. Nia did not argue. She untied her apron, folded it once, and placed it across Martin's forearm. Then she reached into her purse for her phone. A white envelope shifted inside, the insurance notice bearing her mother's name and a payment deadline in red. Her thumb rested against it for half a second before she closed the purse. Martin held out his hand for the badge. Across the table, Ethan saw Nia's fingers tighten around the clip before she released it. The woman who had prevented an allergic reaction and corrected $1 billion mistranslation was being removed as if she were the evening's only mistake. Mr. Pike, Ethan said. Martin turned, but the reply came from the other end of the table. No one leaves. Sheikh Omar's voice was quiet. It carried anyway. His attorney had placed the Arabic memorandum beside the English version on the dark walnut table. The pages looked nearly identical beneath the amber light. Matching logos, matching signatures, matching page numbers. Only the language betrayed them. The attorney aligned 2 paragraphs with the flat edge of his hand. His gold pen, which had tapped steadily throughout dinner, now lay motionless beside the contracts. The Arabic memorandum grants Cole Meridian the right to review port operations, he said. The English document grants your company operational control. Ethan stepped away from his chair. The carpet swallowed his footsteps as he crossed to the attorney's side. Victor moved first, gathering loose pages toward his leather portfolio. Sheikh Omar covered the Arabic copy with one hand. Leave them where they are. Victor's cuff link struck the table with a sharp metallic click. This is a drafting inconsistency, he said. A routine translation issue. Routine. Sheikh Omar looked toward Nia, who stood without her apron or badge beside Martin. Your interpreter called her Arabic defective. Yet she understood my guest, identified the sesame, and translated my language precisely. The Arab guest pushed his untouched replacement plate away. She understood every word. Ethan looked down at the disputed clauses. The English paragraph promised authority over staffing, security, and shipping schedules. The Arabic paragraph promised consultation and audit access. One word had widened into an empire. Martin again extended Nia's badge toward her, making the suspension unmistakable. "Hotel business remains hotel business," he said. Nia accepted the badge this time. Its pin pressed into her palm, but she did not loosen her grip. The cost had become tangible, erased shifts, threatened insurance, a mother's treatment balanced against a sentence spoken correctly. Sheikh Omar rose. Chairs whispered over the carpet as his delegation followed. "The signing is suspended," he said. His attorney closed both copies and drew them to his side. "Until we know why these versions differ, there is no agreement." Camera shutters clicked near the ballroom entrance. Ethan's board members began murmuring into their phones. $4.2 billion remained unsigned beneath the cooling candle wax. Martin had taken Nia's job from her. Now Sheikh Omar had taken the deal from Ethan. The Sheikh's gaze moved from Victor to Nia, then settled on Ethan. "Before anyone blames the waitress," he said, "I want her to explain exactly what that word gives your company the power to do." The chandeliers hummed above the silent ballroom, their gold light trembling across two closed memoranda. Melted candle wax crept toward Ethan Cole's untouched signature line, while phones vibrated against the linen like trapped insects. For the first time that evening, no one waited for Ethan to command the room. They waited to see whom he would sacrifice to reclaim it. A board member leaned close enough for Ethan to smell the man's cedar cologne. "Service staff aren't authorized to interpret," he whispered. "Say she disrupted the negotiation. We can contain this." Across the table, Nia Brooks stood without her badge, the cold brass clasp still marked against her palm. Martin Pike remained near the ballroom doors. Victor Hale sat beside the disputed documents, one hand resting over his notes as though paper could shield him. Ethan looked at the cameras near the entrance, then at Sheikh Omar. Blaming Nia would be simple, believable, expensive only to someone the board considered replaceable. "No," Ethan said. The word landed softly, but the murmuring stopped. He crossed to the table and pulled out the empty chair beside the Al-Rashid attorney. "Ms. Brooks, sit down and explain the difference." Victor's chair scraped sharply across the floor. "Ethan, this is reckless. She has no credentials." Nia did not move. "I'm no longer an employee here." "Then you're not speaking under hotel authority," Ethan replied. "You're speaking because I asked for the truth." That choice shifted the pressure from her apron to his tailored shoulders. Several board members lowered their phones. One began typing faster. Nia placed Martin's confiscated badge on the table rather than taking the chair. The plastic clicked against polished walnut. "Show me the clause." The attorney opened both memoranda. Paper whispered beneath his fingertips. He pointed to the English phrase granting Cole Meridian review authority over regional operations, then to the Arabic text beside it. Nia leaned closer. The air smelled of cooling lamb, saffron, and extinguished candle smoke. She read the Arabic sentence once. Then again, slower. "The English version gives your company the right to examine decisions and raise objections," she said. Her finger stopped beneath a single Arabic word. "This word does more than that." Ethan's jaw tightened. "What does it do?" "It gives Cole Meridian control." No one laughed now. Nia traced the clause without touching the ink. "Not consultation. Not oversight. Control. It allows your company to direct operations, replace local decisions, and treat silence as consent." The Al-Rashid attorney turned his copy toward Sheikh Omar. "That is materially accurate," he said. "The Arabic grants executive control where the English preserves independent management." Victor shook his head. "It's a flexible translation. Commercial Arabic often requires." "No," Sheikh Omar interrupted, his voice low and exact. "It requires honesty." Ethan picked up the English memorandum and compared the two signature pages. His thumb pressed so hard into the binding that the leather creaked. He had invited Nia to speak, expecting an explanation he could manage. Instead, She had defined the mechanism by which his company would gain powers the other side had never knowingly surrendered. Who approved this wording? Ethan asked. Victor's gaze dropped toward his notes. The language passed through several departments. That wasn't my question. Ethan closed the memorandum. The crack echoed beneath the chandeliers. He turned it face down, removing his signature line from view. No one signs anything tonight. Sheikh Omar remained standing. Nia's purse rested near the service station, her mother's treatment notice folded inside it, while her badge lay between men who measured consequences in billions. Ethan had chosen not to blame her. Now another choice waited in the chilled silence. Whether he wanted the truth only when it protected him, or when it demanded a price. Victor finally lifted his eyes. Before you decide what happens next, he said, you should speak to Ms. Brooks privately. The brass latch clicked behind them, sealing the ballroom's music into a distant pulse. Inside the narrow conference room, blue-white ceiling light flattened every surface. Glass table, leather chairs, silver carafe. The air smelled of coffee gone cold and lemon furniture polish. Ethan entered after Nia, but Victor remained in the doorway. This is better handled without an audience, Victor said. He placed a single-page statement on the glass. Its language was clean and bloodless. Nia Brooks had independently reviewed the disputed clause. Both versions expressed the same commercial intent. Any misunderstanding resulted from regional phrasing. Sign that, Victor said. And tonight becomes a translation issue instead of a corporate crisis. Nia read it once. The paper whispered beneath her fingertips. It says I agree with your interpretation. It says the wording is flexible. No. It says I will help you pretend operational control means review authority. Victor's mouth tightened. Ms. Brooks, you have already been suspended. This could make that temporary. Ethan moved to the table. Leave us. Victor hesitated, then stepped out. The latch settled again. For several seconds, only the ventilation fan moved the cold air. Ethan looked at the unsigned statement, then at Nia's bare uniform where her badge had been. If you confirm the Arabic supports the English summary, he said, Cole Meridian can compensate you directly. Nia did not answer. Ethan named a figure large enough to replace months of wages. Then he increased it. Enough to keep rent paid. Enough to cover hospital bills. There would be confidentiality terms, he added. Nia's purse sat beside her chair. She opened it and removed a cream envelope creased into quarters. The Halcyon Grand Insurance logo showed above a treatment notice for her mother. She laid it next to the statement. 2 pieces of paper. One promised relief. The other showed its price. Ethan's eyes stayed on the notice. How soon? Coverage ends with my employment status. Her next treatment is Thursday. The refrigerator beneath the counter clicked off, and the room became painfully quiet. Ethan pulled out a chair, but did not sit. I can make sure the treatment continues. In exchange for my name beneath a lie. In exchange for resolving this before thousands of employees are affected. Those employees did not change the word. Nia slid the statement back across the glass. And neither did I. Ethan's hand stopped inches from it. You understand what refusing means. Yes. She folded the treatment notice along its worn creases. Her thumb paused over her mother's appointment time, then pressed the paper flat. I lose the job. I lose the insurance. My mother may lose her appointment. Her voice never rose. But if I sign, Sheikh Omar loses rights he never agreed to surrender, and your company gets to call theft a misunderstanding. Ethan flinched at the last word, not because it was loud, but because it was exact. Nia placed the envelope inside her purse and zipped it shut. You asked me what the Arabic means. I told you. You do not get to rent a different truth because this one costs too much. She stood, leaving the pen untouched. The offer remained on the table, stripped of its power. Outside, Shoes approached across the marble and stopped at the door. Victor spoke through the wood, his voice low and urgent. Ethan, we have another problem. That statement was not prepared for Ms. Brooks. The latch began to turn. A blade of white light slid across the conference table as the door opened, cutting through the cold blue shadows. Victor Hale entered with another document tucked beneath his arm. The ventilation system hummed overhead, and from the ballroom beyond the wall came the muffled scrape of chairs around a signing table. No one could leave. Nia remained standing beside her untouched pen. Ethan turned toward Victor. Who was it prepared for? Victor closed the door, then placed the second document beside the statement Nia had refused to sign. The pages looked identical at first. Coal Meridian letterhead, narrow margins, a block for a signature. But the name beneath that block was not hers. It was Victor Hale's. Legal sent me the original 40 minutes before dinner, Victor said. I was supposed to certify that both clauses expressed the same intent. Ethan's hand settled on the back of a chair. And you translated them differently anyway? I translated what I was instructed to translate. Victor slid his phone onto the polished walnut. An email glowed on its screen, bearing an internal timestamp from before Nia had spoken Arabic in the ballroom. When Sheikh Omar challenged the memorandum, they replaced my name with hers. A suspended waitress would be easier to discredit than the company interpreter. Nia did not touch the phone. She read the subject line from where she stood, contingency validation. Her mother's Thursday appointment notice rested inches away, its paper trembling beneath the cold draft. The warning had never been meant to silence her. It had been designed to silence Victor, and when he failed, the same machinery had turned toward the nearest person without power. Ethan picked up the original statement and compared its certification language with Nia's copy. Same wording, same promise of compensation, same demand for secrecy. Only the names had changed. Why tell us now, he asked. Victor's jaw tightened. Because Ms. Brooks refused the money I was ready to take. The hum above them seemed to deepen. Nia's eyes moved from Victor's signature line to Ethan. Then this wasn't damage control after I corrected you, she said. Someone expected the discrepancy to be discovered. Victor gave a single nod, and expected one of us to bury it. Footsteps gathered outside. Martin Pike's voice came faintly through the door, followed by the sharper cadence of corporate counsel. Nia reached for both statements before Ethan could. She aligned their corners, photographed them with her phone, then sent the images to Sheikh Omar and the Al Rashid attorney. The soft chime of delivery sounded louder than the ballroom's silverware had all night. Victor stared at her. Ethan did too. You just removed our last chance to contain this, he said. No, Nia replied, slipping her phone into her purse. I removed your chance to contain me. A hard knock struck the door. Mr. Cole, counsel called. The board wants Ms. Brooks removed from the property immediately. All documents are to remain with Coal Meridian. Ethan looked at the two statements in Nia's hands, then at the handle beginning to turn. Outside waited the board, the contract, and the authority he had spent 20 years building. Inside stood the woman they had selected to carry the blame. Ethan stepped between Nia and the door. Victor, open it, he said, and bring everyone back to the ballroom. Victor hesitated. Everyone. Ethan folded Nia's rejected statement once, not to hide it, but to place it inside his jacket beside the original. The board, counsel, Sheikh Omar, the attorneys, Martin. His voice stayed level as the lock released. No more private corrections. They can hear who this warning was really for. The door swung wide, spilling gold light across the cold floor, and Ethan walked toward the room that still believed it belonged to him. Crystal glasses chimed as the ballroom doors opened, and the string quartet faltered into silence. Gold light burned across the marble floor. The air smelled of roasted sesame, polished oak, and coffee gone cold. Ethan entered beside Nia, with Victor a step behind, while corporate counsel hurried forward and whispered, "This meeting is unauthorized." Ethan kept walking. At the center table, Sheikh Omar sat beneath the suspended Coal Meridian crest. The Al Rashid attorney held Nia's photographs on a tablet. Martin Pike waited near the wall with two corporate representatives, his hotel keycard clenched between damp fingers. Nia's phone remained in her hand, her mother's Thursday treatment notice still glowing behind the message confirmation. Mr. Cole, a board member said, rising, remove the employee and preserve the transaction. Ethan stopped at the signing table. The original memorandum lay beside two silver pens prepared for a $4.2 billion agreement. He took the pens, capped them, and placed them in his pocket. The signing is canceled. A ventilation fan hummed above the silence. Counsel stepped closer. You do not have unilateral authority to abandon this agreement. I had enough authority to oversee the process, Ethan replied. That means I have enough responsibility to stop it. He removed both certification statements from his jacket and laid them beneath the chandelier. One carried Victor Hale's name. The other carried Nia Brooks's. Same language. Same false conclusion. Different intended scapegoat. Victor faced Sheikh Omar. The first statement was prepared for me. I was ready to accept payment and certify that both clauses meant the same thing. His voice scraped against the last words, but Ethan did not let the confession absorb the blame. Victor did not design the pressure alone, he said. It happened under my leadership. I approved the negotiation structure. I failed to examine how this translation was being secured. Cole Meridian will not blame a suspended waitress for misconduct created inside its executive chain. Phones rose around the room. Tiny recording lights blinked red. The board member's chair struck the floor as he stood. If you continue, the board will remove you before midnight. Ethan turned the memorandum face down. Then record the vote. He instructed corporate counsel to preserve every draft, email, payment authorization, and translation record. When counsel refused, Ethan used the ballroom phone himself. He called the company's independent audit committee, then federal regulators, and requested an immediate evidence hold. His final call went to outside investigators, granting access to the complete transaction file. With each sentence, another door closed behind him. The deal, the boardroom, the office carrying his name. Martin edged toward Nia. Her employment status remains a hotel matter. Ethan moved between them again, but this time he did not shield her with silence. Reinstate her access records. Preserve the suspension order. No one contacts her without her attorney or an Al-Rashid representative present. Nia lifted her phone. The documents are already beyond this room. Sheikh Omar's attorney confirmed the files had been duplicated and time-stamped. No executive could delete them. No hotel manager could confiscate them. The board member stared at Ethan. You have sacrificed your company for someone you met tonight. No, Ethan said. I stopped sacrificing her for a company I was supposed to lead. Outside, rain tapped the tall windows like impatient fingers. Security personnel entered, not to remove Nia, but to seal the document cases until investigators arrived. Sheikh Omar rose and withdrew his delegation from the agreement. The $4.2 billion contract was dead before the untouched desserts cooled. Then the board member's phone vibrated. He read the screen and announced that an emergency vote had been called for 11:30 p.m. Ethan's CEO credentials would be suspended pending review. Ethan removed the black access card from his wallet and set it beside the unsigned contract. The room no longer belonged to him. Yet every face turned toward Nia when she stepped closer to the microphones. Ethan raised one hand, not to silence her, but to quiet the executives preparing to speak over her. Stop, he said, looking directly at the board. This time she finishes. Nia touched her mother's treatment notice on the screen, drew one measured breath, and faced the room that had laughed when her voice first crossed it. Now no one dared make a sound. The microphones hummed beneath the chandeliers, and cold air whispered through the ballroom vents, carrying the scent of untouched coffee and sesame from abandoned plates. On Nia's phone, the Thursday treatment notice still glowed against her palm. She lifted her eyes and spoke in Arabic, not to display a skill, not to defend her pride, but to return every stolen word to its rightful owner. Her voice moved through the room with measured precision. She explained that Sheikh Omar had granted Cole Meridian the right to review operations, never the right to control them. She translated the disputed clause once as written, then again as Victor had falsely certified it. The difference was one word. The consequence was sovereignty. No one laughed now. The Arab guest who had asked about the entree rose first. In Arabic, he confirmed that Nia had understood him perfectly earlier that evening and had kept him from eating the sesame-containing dish. Sheikh Omar followed, his chair sliding over the marble with a low scrape. Her interpretation is accurate, he said. Both times, Nia turned toward Victor. She did not accuse him. She simply held the microphone out. Its brushed steel caught the gold light between them. Victor stared at it, then at the two certification statements lying beside the dead contract. "Stop," he whispered. His fingers tightened around the microphone. "Please stop calling this a misunderstanding." The ballroom went still enough to hear the ice settling inside the water glasses. Victor admitted that the first false certification had been prepared for him. He admitted he had intended to accept payment and validate language he knew was deceptive. Then he looked at Nia. When she refused, "I understood what my signature would cost someone else." Corporate counsel stepped forward, but the Al Rashid attorney raised a phone displaying timestamps for every duplicated document. The evidence was already beyond Cole Meridian's reach. Martin Pike tried one final time to summon the authority of the Halcyon Grand. "Nia, you are still suspended. Leave the microphone and report to my office." Nia removed her hotel name badge. The pin opened with a small metallic click. She placed it beside Ethan's black access card. "Then I'm no longer speaking as your employee." She faced the room again. "I'm speaking as the person you expected no one to believe." Martin's hand fell to his side. Ethan did not rescue her. He did something harder for a man who had owned every room he entered. He remained silent and let her authority stand without borrowing it. The Cole Meridian board member announced the emergency vote result at 11:47 p.m. Ethan's credentials were suspended effective immediately. Ethan surrendered his company phone and signed the preservation order under the authority he had possessed when he issued it. The loss was no longer theoretical. Yet when reporters gathered beyond the ballroom doors, he refused to call himself courageous. "She told the truth before it was safe," he said. "I only stopped asking her to pay for it." Sheikh Omar confirmed the agreement's permanent withdrawal. Victor signed a sworn admission. Martin rescinded Nia's suspension, but she declined to return under him. The Halcyon Grand's ownership group later placed her lost wages and medical coverage into a protected settlement, while the independent investigation moved forward without her silence as its price. Near midnight, the chandeliers dimmed. Nia slipped her mother's treatment notice back into her pocket. Ethan stood across from her without a title, an access card, or a contract. At the beginning of the night, "Stop" had been the command powerful people used to silence an inconvenient voice. Now it was the line Ethan had drawn against his own power so Nia could finish the truth. He had once owned the room. She taught him when to stop owning it.